Nothing compares to the exhilaration of triumphing, while others eagerly anticipate your failure. Dan, it is disheartening to witness the loss of 1 million followers over the past year, as well as the drastic decline in your stock price, forcing you to delist from the stock exchange. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the like button and the notification bell to stay updated on our daily videos. Now, your time seems to be consumed by imitating Andrew Tate and engaging in political discussions on Twitter. This sequence of events epitomizes failure, and I will now elucidate precisely how it unfolded. In January 2019, Dinarian took his company, Ignite public at a share price of $250. At that time, his career was flourishing. His Instagram account was amassing 400,000 new followers each month. He resided in a $65 million mansion. And most importantly, everyone believed his opulent lifestyle was genuine. However, in July 2020, just 18 months after Ignite's inception, Dan's vice president, who was fired by Dan, filed a lawsuit alleging unfair dismissal. This legal action exposed Dan's fraudulent business model. The lawsuit revealed that Dan had not actually purchased the $65 million mansion, but rather rented it for $2.4 million annually. Additionally, it was disclosed that Dan covered the travel expenses of a rotating group of models who accompanied him everywhere, despite his claims that they were there voluntarily. The lawsuit also shed light on Dan's peculiar expenditures, which included $75,000 on a paintball field, $40,000 on a rock climbing wall, $60,000 on a Star Wars gun set, $31,000 on pool renovations, $50,000 on a bed frame, $15,000 on a ping pong table, and $88,000 on a vault, among others. Furthermore, it was revealed that some personal expenses, such as household items, groceries, and luxury yacht rentals, were charged to Ignite. A former employee stated that Ignite covered all expenses related to models, events, and yachts, simply by wrapping them with the Ignite logo, and he would send them the bill, the pool's trampolines. The employee added his events that had nothing to do with the business. Dan responded by stating that some journalists said Ignite was funding his life. He emphasized that he had been working hard for 10 years and had gained fame for his dedication for 7. He mentioned that he started Ignite 2 years ago and raised around $100 million, owning the majority of the company. Despite his arrogant response, it failed to dismiss the concerns, especially regarding the company's atrocious financial reports. During Ignite's first year in business, Dan had spent a total of $69 million, which was offset by only $9.7 million in sales. The previously mentioned lawsuit explained how poorly this money was spent. As a result, Ignite's stock price plummeted by almost 90%, dropping from $2.50 to a low of 28 cents in October 2020. As the media began reporting on Dan's losses, he responded by comparing Ignite to Uber, stating that even though Uber is worth $80 billion, it has never had a profitable month since its inception and lost over $5 billion in one quarter last year. However, Ignite's financial losses were not the worst part. The company only had an audience because of Dan's extravagant lifestyle, which was exposed as rented due to the lawsuit. His once mysterious and intriguing lifestyle lost its appeal when people realized it was just a facade. Additionally, the whole mega rich guy on Instagram persona was no longer impressive by 2020, and this began to reflect in Dan's Instagram statistics. In May 2020, Dan significantly reduced his Instagram posts, and by the end of the year, he started losing followers. Meanwhile, the media speculated that he would soon face bankruptcy, to which Dan responded by mocking the journalists with a tweet featuring a skeleton and the caption, "The dumbass journalist patiently waiting for Ignite to go bankrupt." While Ignite wasn't filing for bankruptcy, it didn't mean that things were going well. After losing $69 million in 2019, Ignite incurred a further loss of $19.7 million in 2020. During this time, the media also revealed another peculiar detail. Dan Band's dad was involved. The situation with running Ignite behind the scenes posed a significant problem due to Paul Boran's status as a convicted felon, which legally prohibited him from involvement in publicly traded companies. Paul had served time in jail for fraud in the 90s, so Dan had to maintain the facade that they weren't closely associated. Although Dan claimed to only have sporadic contact with Paul, an article suggested that Paul had taken on a more active role within the company, exchanging numerous emails with other top executives at Ignite. While this was mere speculation at the time, if Paul was indeed running the company, he seemed to be making positive strides. Despite incurring a loss of $19.7 million in 2020, Ignite surprisingly recorded a profit in the final quarter. Dan took to Twitter to announce this, expressing his disbelief at the naysayers. The Forbes article explained that Ignite achieved this by cutting costs and reducing their promotional budget by nearly 75% due to the pandemic's impact on social gatherings. As economic conditions improved in early 2021, Dan's stock price experienced a rapid recovery, quadrupling from 28 cents per share in October 2020 to $13 per share just 1 year later. Consequently, Ignite's revenue increased from $16.9 million in 2020 to $78.8 million in 2021. It was at this point that Dan expressed his desire to sell the company, hoping to fetch a price of $2 billion. However, the chances of achieving such a substantial sum began to dwindle as the value of Dan's company plummeted. The progress made in 2021 was completely reversed throughout 2022, largely due to a specific incident. The SEC filed a lawsuit against Ignite Brands Ltd. for failing to produce documents during an accounting fraud investigation. The SEC staff uncovered information suggesting that Ignite may have submitted false or misleading financial statements regarding their revenues. In the company's fiscal year ending on December 1, 2020, it was discovered that Ignite not only potentially falsified their revenue, but was also under criminal investigation for unrelated matters. Consequently, the stock plummeted to a new record low. However, Dan resolved this issue by completely removing Ignite from the stock exchange without providing any explanation for the company's removal. 2 months later, Dan Ban's father, serving as an unpaid advisor, spoke on behalf of Ignite in an interview with MJ Bis Daily, as Dan was unavailable for comment. He stated that there was no reason for Ignite to be a public company unless they intended to raise capital from public markets. Despite being publicly traded, about 90% of the company's shares were owned by Dan and his associates. Although this structure provided no real benefits and attracted unwanted attention, Dan seemed to believe that as a public figure, he should have a public company. However, in March 2023, it was reported that Dan continued to refuse cooperation with governing bodies. While Ignite's privatization meant that its income was no longer public, there seemed to be no significant improvement in business. Dan recently boasted on Ignite's Instagram about having the best-selling vapes in South America, but the top comment questioned the authenticity of the claim. On Twitter, Ignite's posts receive only about 30 likes per post, and their official TikTok page has less than 4,000 followers. Furthermore, Dan's social media presence is also suffering, with his main Instagram page losing 100,000 followers per month due to his infrequent activity and sporadic posts. The majority of the most popular comments express disappointment that one has to pay to have women around them. They find it sad and laughable, implying that the person's life is pitiful. Additionally, the commenter mentions that they don't understand why they still follow this individual. In January 2021, Bilzerian asked Dan why he had been less active on Instagram lately. Dan responded by saying that he had just finished editing his book for the 25th time and it was finally done. However, Dan did not return to Instagram after the book's release. Just a few months ago, on the Skinny Confidential podcast, Dan provided an updated explanation for why he had quit everything. He stated that he simply didn't care anymore and compared social media to a video game he had already beaten years ago. He expressed his belief that social media is detrimental to society and likened it to cancer. It is clear that Dan Sab harbors resentment towards his social media career and is tired of being disliked. However, it is unlikely that his next venture, the Sigma Society, will improve his situation. After spending too much time with Andrew Tate, Dan Zarin is now working on his Alpha Male course and website. He describes it as a platform that will teach men how to be men, as he believes that this generation has lost that knowledge. While this venture may attract an audience, it appears to be a desperate and unoriginal attempt to make money, which often indicates a lack of fresh ideas or offerings.